Hi YouTube, I will now go to a room called Unified, available in HackTheBox Starting Point Tier 2. The whole time I will rely on using the official write-up. If you haven't had the chance to previously check out HackTheBox, this will be a great way to dip your toe and get a feel of the new platform and skills required to solve the challenges. A bit on Log4j from HackTheBox Log4j themed blog post while the Nmap scan runs. Log4j from Apache Software Foundation is a popular logging library for Java. Log libraries support different formats, which ensures the logs will be in expected format for a specific application. On an example of a FTP server, where usernames are logged to track login attempts, if the application would utilize vulnerable log4j, attackers could put any content they want into the FTP log file and trigger code execution. For example, if you would send a link in a vulnerable messaging application like a vulnerable version of Twitter, the service could query those URIs in order to scan for malicious content or just create a preview of the link. To confirm the service is vulnerable, we will here use the main we control and see if the application will query that URI and reach to us. Log4j found its use in numerous industrial applications, SCADA and energy management systems, and the vulnerability impacted companies such as Cloudflare, Palo Alto Panorama, VMware, Webex, LinkedIn, and IoT devices. So network-facing services written in Java are most obviously at risk. JNDI is a feature in Log4j that's involved in the so-called Log4Shell vulnerability, and it should be disabled by default. There are also mentioned several mitigation techniques, including blocking with the web application firewall, patching Log4j, disabling remote code bases, and disabling JNDI lookups. By now, there are several Log4Shell scanners available to check if your network is vulnerable. Now, let's go back to the box questions and answers. The scan is still running, but we could notice in the current state of the output mention 4 open ports, represented with suitable number of stars in the answers box, so we can already answer that question. Next two questions rely on the software and version running on the highest port. Then, what is the CVE for the identified vulnerability? Next, what is the version of Maven that we installed? Next, what protocol does JNDI leverage in the inspection? What tool do we use to intercept the traffic, indicating the attack was successful? What port do we need to inspect intercepted traffic for? What port is the MongoDB service running on? What is the default database name for Unify applications? What is the function we use to enumerate users within the database in MongoDB? What is the function to add data to the database in MongoDB? What is the function we use to update users within the database in MongoDB? What is the password for the root user? And then finally, user and root flags. And we have to provide answers in that order. Because this is the starting point and there are all these questions in front of you, I'd even say you are encouraged to read the information provided in the official walkthrough. Don't fret of the reading of other people's work, Googling and doing the research to get some initial ideas how something could be achieved. And there are new patents coming out every day, new open source tools, new exploits. A high-tech device of today will become end of life and obsolete of the near future. So you'll be doing a lot of reading, trial and errors, and dealing with imposter syndrome if you want to get ahead in this field. So get used to it from early on. That's nothing new and nothing strange. So the Nmap scan finished, and now we see we have open ports 22, 6789, 8080, and 8443. So the question stated what's the software running on port 8443. We here see mentioned Unify Network. the name of the software that is running on the highest port. It's a Unify network. Next question, what is the version of the software that is running? So we don't see that in the Nmap output. We will then open the Firefox and go to that address. So IP address of the machine and highest open port on the machine, which is 8443. We have here a self-signed certificate. Certificate is only valid for Unify. Okay. We already have a burp proxy running and web requests proxied through burp. So let's forward the requests. So let's double check how we set the proxy. Okay, we see we have a manual proxy configuration. Also use this proxy for HTTPS. Okay. So all web requests are proxied through burp. Now let's try entering some random username and password to see how the burp will comprehend them and sort them out in parameters. Okay, we here see parameter username, password, remember, and strict. So according to the provided official walkthrough, we will here manipulate the remember parameter. So instead of the value false for the remember parameter, we will paste the string mentioned in the official walkthrough. All should be written in one line. So while I sort that out in the background, let's take a look at this picture explaining exploitation of Log4j vulnerability in 5 steps I found on Let's Defend IO Twitter account. Our focus point here is the payload under the remember parameter, currently with boolean value false, but we will change it and present it as a string. The string is pasted to log4j for logging, but log4j in this format interpolates the string and queries the malicious LDAP server and the corresponding resource that we will set as an encoded reverse shell packed in a Java class, which finally leads to RCE. Today we will use LDAP server built using Rogue JNDI, Git repo, and Apache Maven, a build automation tool used primarily for Java projects. So let's run the TCP dump on the network interface we use for HackTheBox. And see what we have, what's happening on port 389 related to LDAP service. And when we send the adapted post request to the Unify server, we get a response back. We see it in burp, but also in our terminal. So according to the room's walkthrough, we should use TCP dump to monitor what's happening on interface TAN0, which is the interface we use for HackTheBox, and port 389 related to LDAP server. So we now know the service is vulnerable and we'll proceed with exploitation. So let's run according to the walkthrough, commands sudo update and install OpenJDK package. Then double check Java version and proceed with installing Maven. I already installed everything mentioned in the walkthrough, so not to waste time. And install the Maven with the provided command and running command mvn-v, you should see in the output mentioned Apache Maven 363. And we will now git clone the rogue JNDI, git repo, and build package using Maven. This will create a jar file in the rogue JNDI target directory. Now we can construct our payload to pass into the Java application. And we have a build success. To use the rogue JNDI server, we will have to construct and pass it a payload, which will be responsible giving us a shell on the affected system. We will base 64 encode the payload to prevent any encoding issues. As in the walkthrough, we will use port 4444 to receive the shell. All good for now, just copy pasting command from the official walkthrough. And when copy pasting the command, pay attention to enter the adequate IP address of your host and HackTheBox machine. Okay, while we are preparing for that, let's open another terminal and start a netcat listener to capture the reverse shell on port 4444. Let's adapt the remember parameter to include O equals Tomcat resource. And click send. Okay, at first we don't receive a shell back. Let's double check what we wrote. I don't see a mistake, but let's stop the rogue JNDI for running and let's run this set of commands once again. Rogue JNDI netcat listener and forward the request from burp with mapped O equal Tomcat resource. And great, we have connection. Let's stabilize the shell with the command script dev null c bash. So after some digging, we should find the user flag in the home mycloud directory. So let's submit some answers we found so far. What is the version of the software running on the highest port related to Unify network? And it's 6454. Submit answer. Answer is correct. What is the CVE for the identified vulnerability? And after some Googling, we find it's log4j CVE 2021 44 22 8. What is the version of the Maven that we installed? So let's double check that with the command mvn. If we can find in which terminal we had that output available, let's run the command once again. And it's 363. What protocol does JNDI leverage in the injection? We saw it's LDAP. What tool do we use to intercept the traffic, indicating the attack was successful? And according to the room official walkthrough, expected is to use TCP dump, not Wireshark, for example. So not to beat yourself up. In starting point, it is expected for you to get a good grasp of the room's concept and then try to do the box on your own. What port do we need to inspect intercepted traffic for? So that was 389 port related to LDAP server. Next question is related to Mongo database. So Let's proceed with privilege escalation. And one of the methods for privilege escalation is to check process status command, PSAUX, A for show processes for all users, U display processes user owner, and X also show processes not attached to a terminal. And if we grep for Mongo, we will here see the related port, and after some googling, default Mongo database name. What is the default database name for Unify application? After some googling, we will see that's ACE. What is the function we use to enumerate users within the database? Let's read up on the walkthrough. And find answer, database admin find with parentheses. Next question, what is the function to add data? So if we cannot find the answer to this question in the provided walkthrough, let's do some googling. So if we search for Mongo database admin, add data, insert will be hinted. So let's try with database admin insert with parentheses. And that's the correct answer. Next question, what is the function to use to update users within the database in Mongo database? And in the walkthrough, we find the command database admin update with parentheses. That's the correct answer. Next question, what is the password for the root user? Okay, let's proceed with copy pasting commands from the official walkthrough. Okay, we copy pasted the command from the walkthrough with additional apostrophe. So we made the mistake there. We shouldn't paste that last apostrophe. So let's once again get the reverse shell on the box. And let's enumerate the database. And let's find all users. So the output reveals a user called administrator. Their password hash is located in the xShadow variable, but in this instance it cannot be cracked with any password cracking utilities. Instead, we can change the xShadow password hash with our very own created hash in order to replace the administrator's password to authenticate to the administrative panel. To do this, we can use the mkpassvd command line utility, and we have $6 the identifier for the hashing algorithm, which is SHA-512 in this case. We'll have to make a hash of the same type. Let's proceed to replacing this existing hash with the one we created with the Mongo terminal command with database admin update function. And we can verify that the password has been updated in the Mongo database by running the same command as previously with the function database admin find. And the new hash appears to have been updated. So for the user administrator, we are now using password1234. And let's now try logging into the web app with the provided username and password. But okay, let's stop that proxy we've used. We don't need it anymore. So let's change the setting in the Firefox. Okay, we are receiving some logging errors. Let's try from the new tab. Username administrator and password. Let's double check the caps lock. Password 1234. And we are in. Everything looks great. The authentication process was successful, and we now have administrative access to the Unify application. Unify offers a setting for SSH authentication, which is a functionality that allows you to administer other access points over SSH from a console or terminal. Navigate to Settings site and scroll down to find SSH authentication setting. SSH authentication with a root password has been enabled. So the page shows the root password in plain text. Let's attempt to authenticate to the system now as root over SSH. And copy paste the machine IP address. Let's use the password we saw in the application. Okay, great, we have an access. We obtain a root access, and let's get the root flag. We got it. Let's submit answers for the password for the root user, and finally user flag and root flag. With that, we finished the unified box. If you enjoyed this walkthrough, please like and subscribe. Until next time!